Good evening. So, as we do always, I will start with a short prayer that many of you know. For those that don't know, I will start with this prayer that I do anywhere I go. It doesn't matter if it's today in a Buddhist center, or if it is in a university, or in a school, or in a hospital, or in a church, like has been in these past days. And the reason for this prayer is because it is very important for me to remember the gratitude towards those that have taught us. So if there is anything that I can share, it's because someone have taught me. So I like to remember my teachers, my gurus, and the teachers of my teachers. So we start with this very short prayer. Okay? The first part is in Tibetan, the second part in Sanskrit. Those that know and like to accompany me, welcome. Locho sampo pagyo trashe pa tuche tembe trile yarnoda Pegye drolor zampe ze parchen Palde lame shabla solade Omo a guru vajra dara suma timoni shasane karma Uta vardanya shri Bhadra Varsa manya sarva siddhi Pakyuke kudan dagilu Pakyuke sundan dagima Pakyuke tudan dagi Treyeme chitu jingilo Om muni muni maha muni Shakya Munye Soha. Okay. This evening makes me very happy to be here. One of the reasons is makes me happy to be here in Bhadra Center, which is a place that not only today, but on a constant basis is taking care of creating the conditions for us and other people that come here to practice, to learn. And I think this is something that is very important because sure, it's beautiful and important to have some strong, deep moments that touches our heart and opens our mind. That's very important. They are actually, for me, there are moments in life that we really learn something new. There are specific moments that something happens, we listen a word, we see something, and it touches our heart, and it opens our mind. These moments are very important. But what is even more important is how after we cultivate that understanding, that feeling in our daily life. So how we live in our daily life, in what's, let's say, in Brazil we call o que é o arroz e feijão, which is the rice and beans. I think in Holland it will be what is the soup and sandwich. No? Basically what you get every day. Okay? That's the real important thing. Okay? Then we have in special moments, then they are also important. They have their importance. But it's what we do and how we do in our very daily life with the constancy that really makes the difference. Also, sometimes I stop to think about what are the positive aspects and the more difficult or negative aspects that we have, for example, of Buddhism in the Western world. And looking at it, I see that actually we have so many good conditions nowadays. We have space in our mind because we don't need to worry too much about the material things. We don't have the fear that what are we going to eat tomorrow, if we are going to have food or not. We live in a very comfortable manner. Most of us, we have very good intellectual level, very good ability to understand things. We have the ability to have access to all sorts of informations from different religion, different spiritual traditions. We can access everything, we can understand, we have different people coming to teach, and so on. Even, I remember one time, this master from Ladakh in Borobudur, some years ago with us, and his name is Venerable Sangasena. He was saying something which was, he was very nice, because he was saying, you know, nowadays you are so lucky. He saying, in my time, for me to go to receive teachings, I need to walk for maybe 1 day, 2 days, no shoes, or if the shoes were there, they were completely broken. Very often walking in Ladakh in the middle of snow, so cold. He said, yes, true, I was born there, but still was so cold. And then when you get to the place to receive the teachings, you meet the master, maybe he's there, maybe he's not there. Then you receive one teaching one time, then you need to go back again 1 week walking back home. Say, nowadays you invite your master to come to your house. Any moment you invite, he comes. Just turn on the computer. Then you say, you choose what teaching you like to receive. And then you ask him, and he's there ready to give to you. You have many choices. And then when you don't understand something, you say, oh, excuse me, my master, could you please repeat? And then he go back and he can repeat as many times as you like, no? The access that we have towards information, it's so great. If we think in Tibet, information was very difficult to get, and people didn't have a very good level of intellectual understanding also. So that's why they needed many long years of study and preparation, slowly, to be able to understand some philosophical aspects. Okay? So we have really very, very good conditions in many levels. But where is our weakness? Where I find weakness is the difficulty we have for constancy and effort. Because the process of knowledge is divided into 3 parts. We are very good in the first 2. The first part is understanding. Someone explains something to us, we listen, we read, we understand. The second step is comprehension. Comprehension means that knowledge that I understood, it becomes my own knowledge. It's not something that I am repeating because someone else said. I understand it so clearly that it becomes my own knowledge. And the third level is that I need to pass what is conceptual, intellectual, I need to pass it down to my heart. It must become an actual fact. I must develop that state of mind within myself. And how do we do that? Through what is called meditation, which is through the process of familiarization. So it's the process that we need to repeat that again and again. We need to induce ourselves to that state of consciousness many, many times, until gradually that state of consciousness becomes natural and spontaneous. That's the part which really takes a lot of effort. Because it's not 1 day, it's not 2 days, it's not 3 days. It's maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 decades maybe. You know? Yes. It takes time to sit down, meditate, to direct one's mind and familiarize one's own self with a way of acting and so on. And what we have nowadays, we want everything immediate, no? I remember some time ago there was some guys with a t-shirt, and in the t-shirt was written, "There is a pill for everything." No? And somehow, sometimes we expect this. That okay, I do this and I get something and it will be magical. Even there is one master, which not from the Buddhist tradition, from another tradition from Asia, and he's giving in United States and around Europe one empowerment, one initiation, that is an individual initiation that costs $1 million. And normally the line of people every year is completely fully booked. If you want to receive that initiation, maybe you need to put yourself in line for 2-3 years. Okay. What do I think? This master, independently of judging him or not, he has many incredible humanitarian works that he does in India and many other things. So the way how he used the money, that's not my business. My point is that he understood something from our culture. Many of us, not all of us, luckily, we judge value by price. And on the other side, we expect to get some sort of miracle. But the fact is that even if you pay your $1 million for your initiation, if you don't put it into practice after on your daily life, $1 million, not really lost, but somehow you don't know what to do with it after. So one of the important parts that sometimes I feel that we lack is this part of the constancy, the ability to really go there and put into practice and sit down and so on. Okay? And many times people get upset because they say, but I understood. Wonderful, but that's just the first step. Now you need to practice it. Now we need to train ourselves within what we understood. Now, in Italian there is a saying, which is, fra il dire e il fare c'è di mezzo il mare, which is between saying and doing, there is an ocean in between. Which I like to change a little bit that saying, which is, fra il capire e il realizzare c'è di mezzo il mare. Between understanding and realizing, there is in between a whole ocean that we need to go through. Okay? So, our mind, we have two different aspects of understandings in our mind. Of how to say, two different aspects of, we can say our mind is divided into two different parts, let's call it that. One is what we call a constructed mind, and the other one is what we call a spontaneous part of our mind. The constructed part of our mind, it is basically all the points of view, the concepts that we have, which are based on the culture in which we grow up and live, the education that we have received, the experiences that we have had, and normally are concepts and ideas that we receive from someone else, and somehow we end up following it. One very clear example from me, that is the one I always give, but for me it's very clear, so I end up always giving the same example, is the example of the two colors, the pink and the blue. No? If we ask people what's the color for girl and what's the color for boy, between pink and blue, pink is for girls and blue for boys. And maybe if the boy is going to school and he's like 5-6 years old, whatever age, and you put him dressed in pink, they say, poor boy, what are you doing to him? No? So, and if we ask, why is pink the color for girls and why is blue the color for boys? Most of us, what would we say? Because that's how it is. What a stupid question, you know. Some things are just as they are. And blue is a color for boys and pink is a color for girls. So I'm going to have a new little boy coming to my house, and what's the color I'm going to make his room? Blue, and all the little clothes and everything I buy blue, and the same thing. This is a constructed view. Even though we don't know why, and even though we don't understand how, but still the fact that blue is for boy and pink is for girl, it's a constructed view. Now, let's see the reason why blue is for boy and pink is for girl. There's a very precise reason for that. It starts in 1918, United States. 1918, United States was the beginning of a part of the Industrial Revolution. Up to that time, which was the color that boys and girls were dressed in? Beige. Because the colored dress was too expensive. No one had money, only the very rich people had money to buy colored dresses. Even when we look movies that represent what was happening before the Industrial Revolution, what was the color that everyone was dressed, the most simple people? mainly in this sort of white, beige, gray. That was what everybody was dressing. So what happened was that when colored dress became more affordable, they needed to teach people which way how to buy. That's when came the marketing. So they decided in 1918 that pink was the color for boys and blue was the color for girls. Because they said at the time that pink is a color that is more strong, and blue, the light blue, is a color that is more soft. So the light blue was for girls, and the pink was for boys. And they also follow a little bit how it was in the royal family in France. They were also wearing, like this was very common before that, some centuries ago, that for the men to wear pink also in France before. So basically what happened is that they sold clothes for children from 1918 to 1920, pink for boys and blue for girls. What happened then was in 1920, people were not used to buy clothes like nowadays once every 6 months, you know. But in the moment that you make such a big production, what do we need people to do? To buy again and again. So they needed to create a need that didn't exist really. So what they did in 1920, they inverted it. And in 1920 they inverted it, making that blue was for boys and pink was for girls. And what happened from 1920 to 2017? Blue is for boys and pink is for girls. Here we are. This is just one small example of something that one day someone chose something, had an idea, put forward one thought, and here we are following it. This is part of what is called a constructed part of our mind. Okay? So, what happened is that one of the main important parts that we need to change in order for us to be happy, it's not so much the constructed part. There are parts of the constructed mind that, yes, is good for us to change. But mainly is what is called the spontaneous mind, which are our emotions, which are the aspects of our mind that come out spontaneously and naturally, independently of the culture in which we live, independently of the context or the country, and so on and so on. For example, it doesn't matter which culture we go, most people have anger, jealousy, envy, fear, attachment, love, compassion, generosity, affection, stability, concentration, wisdom. These are things that go much beyond our cultural aspect. And these are the aspects most important that we need to put an effort to change, because our happiness are based much more into these aspects than anything else. So, one of the important things for me is that to change our mind, which is something that it is possible, it takes time, it takes effort, it takes constancy. All of this to say from the beginning that I'm happy to be here today, because here we have constancy and not just once in a while. Okay? Because that's the only way. The only way that we have truly to change our mind from a deeper perspective is through constancy. Repeating again and again. And gradually things will come. Because one of the very important qualities of our mind is the flexibility of the mind. Is the fact that our mind is not something solid, rigid. But the mind is constantly changing and adapting in accordance to the way how we live. And the most powerful resource that we have is our own mind. If we look at this world, there are many conflicts, right? How many people we need in order to have conflict? One. Why, we don't have conflicts with ourselves? We never have conflicts between what I think and what I want? Or what I think and what I feel? Do I go or I don't go? Is it right or is it wrong? You know? I think very often people have conflicts within themselves. We have conflict within ourselves. I think this is not something so strange, no? So what happens is that if we really go to look at the conflict, starting from one person to two persons, family, work, friends, society, country, international conflicts, world level, and so on. Okay? Is there any conflict that exists that is not starting in human mind? Is there any conflict that we can find that is not being generated in our own minds? No. Are there enough resources in the world for everyone? Yes. Truly speaking, yes. There are not enough resources to satisfy the desire of everyone. And even the actual definition of economy already says that. You know, when the first time I heard the definition of economy that is taught in university, it shocked me actually. It's a friend that is a economist, and he told me, we were having lunch together, and he told me, yeah, you know, the classical definition of economy, there are some more modern definitions of economy, but a classical definition of economy is that economy is the science that makes finite resources, because I know it in Portuguese, that makes so that finite resources can satisfy the infinite desire of humankind, of man. So the first thing that I got shocked, I was saying, how can someone expect something that is infinite to be satisfied? But it's very wise at the same time, because it's saying, our desire, does it have an end? Or the more I have, the more I want? How does it work normally? When we are able to get the object of desire, I want so much that cup of water. I want so much. And we do everything and we get it. Normally when we get the object of desire, what is the short-term result? Joy. Well-being. What is the middle-term result? Indifference. Long-term result? Insatisfaction. Sometimes the long-term comes quite fast. Okay? But what happens is that the more I have, the more I want. The more I want, the less I have. Also because if I ask, how much do you have? Of anything. Of affection, of attention, of money, of health, of well-being, of anything that we like, okay? How can we answer if I have a lot or if I have little? Based on what? Comparison. That's what we do. It's like I had a friend, and he passed few years of his life very upset and really in conflict because he felt that he didn't have enough money because he wanted to buy a bank. And he couldn't. Because his friends were buying banks. And he couldn't buy a bank. Had many companies, had many things, a lot of money. He could pass his whole life just, as we say in Brazil, in the beach, living by the seaside in the hammock, hanging in the hammock, you know. He had no problem. But still he suffered a lot because he was trying to do all sorts of maneuvers in order to buy his bank, which he couldn't do. So, according to him, he didn't have enough. Why? Because there's someone else with whom he was comparing that had more. So, normally when we say, the more I want, the less I have. Why? Because my comparison is not with what I have, it's what I want. Normally when we say I don't have enough, the fact that we don't have enough is based on what we want or on what we need. We don't have enough of what we need, or we don't have enough of what we want. Most of the times is want. So there is this very simple rule. The more I have, the more I want. The more I want, the less I have. Okay? I just take advantage to give two definitions which I like, which is the definition of being rich and the definition of being poor. How can we define if a person is rich or poor? Can we define this by the amount of money the person has? Is there a right amount from which the person becomes rich and from which the person becomes poor? My own personal definition is that rich are those that are satisfied. Poor are those that are unsatisfied. Because to be rich means to have more than what I need. To be poor means not to have enough of what I need. And when we are unsatisfied, it means we don't have enough. So, this brings us to the fact that it's not a matter of gaining more and more things that will make us necessarily more happy. And I think this we all know quite well, right? But still, do we sometimes think, oh, if I would get that, I would be so happy? Does it still come to the mind sometimes? Maybe yes, maybe not, I don't know. I had periods in my life, you know. There were a period in my life which I was very much attached to watches. Then I liked watches in this way, in that way, whatever. Then one time I was in a shop with a friend, and I said, oh, look what a beautiful watch. And for me it was extremely expensive. I remember it was still in lira, before the euro, the time of euro. It was costing 1 million lira. It was a lot of money for me. I would never imagine even to buy a watch like this. And I said that, and the next day the friend came with a watch to me. You know? I said, oh, what a nice watch. I was there with my watch. I was so happy. Then I arrived in India, and I was quite attached to my watch. And I have just a very simple rule that happens in my life. When I'm very attached to something, I lose it. Okay? It always happened like this. So I had this watch. I was very attached, and I knew that I have this like this. So I thought, I cannot lose this watch. And I was some sort holding it. And then I fell asleep in the car going from the airport to the monastery, which was like 6-7 hours drive. And then the way how it had a particular way of closing, and what had happened, it opened, and I lost it. So that was the last time I had attachment to watches, actually, because I saw that I started to suffer because I lost the watch, and I was saying, what is that about, you know? Because finally what I need to know is what time is it, that's all. So stop with all of this. Then I had a period after that which I was attached, I liked pens. And then I liked very much this pen, that pen. Then one time, one friend of ours, Patrizia Torsini, some of you knew her, she gave me a present in Christmas, which was a beautiful Mont Blanc, with a golden leaf and the whole thing, very beautiful pen and so on, and I was so happy with my pen. You know? And I was happy with the pen. But actually what I found out was that these little normal classical big pens, I don't know if you call the big pens, yeah. They wrote better than the Mont Blanc. So after some time I was still forcing to write with that pen because I was somehow attached to it. And finally I got to the conclusion, what I need is to write, you know. What difference does it make if it's made out of very plastic or if it's made out of gold? And some time ago, a friend came to me and gave me a beautiful present. I think one of the most special presents I've received in all these last years. And came and gave me one Bhadra, which is this object here. One Bhadra. little bigger than this, maybe like this size, made of pure gold. Solid gold. And I was like, wow. So I took it, I put in the altar as an offering there. And then I looked at it and I say, so what? What difference does it make finally if it's of gold or if it's of plastic, if I'm not going to sell it? No, it's just the value that I attribute to it, right? So it depends on the function that it has for me. It's not what is, it depends on the function that I have and the value that I attribute to it. So some months later I was able to give it to someone. The first occasion where I really wanted to give a special present, I took what I had most precious somehow, and I gave it as a present when Trijang Rinpoche came. So it was a way for me to give a function to that, because what I saw it was when that object was there and it had no function, you know, and I saw that I was attached more to the idea that I had about that object and the fact that generally speaking it is something precious. And not what really that object was giving to me. So I was able somehow to transform this view and to understand that it's the objects that need to serve me and not me to serve the objects. And what is the important thing is what is the function that that thing has towards me and not what's the general value that is given to it. If I want to make business with it, then it has a specific function to me. Otherwise, what difference does it make? So I came down to a very simple rule, which is the following. Go home, look at the stuff you have, and ask yourself, do I need it? Does this object has any function to me? What is the function it has to me? If the function is to help me to remember some special moments that I went through. If the function is to make the room look more beautiful, it can be anything, any function is fine, okay? But if I possess something only for possessing it, and it has no other function other than being an object to be possessed, then the possibilities are three. Or you sell it, or give it, or throw it. Because the things that we accumulate in our lives, they take part of our lives. They consume space in our lives. Consume time, consume energy. Cleaning, maintaining, taking care, looking at it, having it there, everything consumes space. Consumes energy of our own lives. And what's the most precious resource that we have in our life? Life itself. Time, space, energy. So the question that comes is, what do I want to fill my life with in order for me to be happy? Because that's the main objective that I have, and I believe all of you also, no? What do we truly want? Like everyone else. We don't want to suffer, and we want to be happy. That's what we all want. You know? And we can also share this wish with others. We want also others to be happy and not to suffer. But we want for ourselves also. So the question that comes is, how do I do that? And what do I want? How can I become happy? How can I be in a state of happiness that is stable, it's constant? First of all, we need to have a clear idea of what happiness is and what do I need to do to be there. What is happiness? Making it simple, first of all, I think that each one of us, we must make this question to ourselves. And the answer that I'm going to give now is just my answer, which doesn't need to be your answer. Okay? Each one of us, we can have a different one. That's fine. Because it's not a conceptual answer that we need to look for. It's a deep inner answer that we need to look for. Making question is very important, and most of the times the most important thing is the question and not the answer. Because if we don't make the right question, we will never get the right answer. So, the question is, what is happiness for me? In other words, what do I want in my life? I will help a little bit for us to make this analysis, to go through this process, okay? Happiness is something that is based only on external conditions. What does it mean to be happy? To have a body like this, to have a house like that, and so on. Okay, we go another way which makes it more direct. Imagine that we go to one place and suddenly, we go home, we touch something and comes out the genius of the lamp. Okay? Come out the genius of the lamp, and he can grant us one wish, not 3 wishes. This one grants only 1 wish. Okay? So he will grant us 1 wish. And actually, it's even a little different. It's not any wish. He gives us 2 choices. The genius come and say, look, I can give you 2 choices. First choice is, I give you anything you want material. How do you want your body? You want to be more short, you want to be more tall, you want to be more fat, you want to be more thin, you want to have more healthy body, you want to, I don't know, be a man, be a woman, whatever you like. Okay? Change your nose, your ears, your eyes, whatever you like. Here, you can change it. What do you want about the house where you live? You want the house to be different? You want more houses? What about the money? You want a different bank account? You want to own the bank? What do you want? I give you everything. Just put the number that you want, and there you have it. What about the people around you? What type of people you want? How you want them to be? What do you like? Okay. So, more or less, anything that we can imagine that is from outside of us, everything is there. But all these genius things, they always have a but in between, no? And here the but is the following. I can give everything externally, but one, you cannot change idea all the time. You need to tell me now everything that you want, and then you have it. It's not that every week you can change something of it. Second is that internally I cannot change anything. I cannot take away your insatisfaction. I cannot give you stability. I cannot take away your jealousy. I cannot take away your envy. I cannot take away any your fear or any your traumas or any other thing that is inside of you. I cannot give you more love, more patience, more stability, or more wisdom. Second choice. Your body is the one that you have. No change. The house, that's what you got. The job, I'm not going to change it. The people that you have around you, that's what it is. Material situation, no change whatsoever. Everything remains the same. But what can the genius offer to us at this point? Patience, love, stability, satisfaction, joy, wisdom. He can take away some things such as anger, aversion, jealousy, envy, fear, insatisfaction, anxiety, selfishness, ignorance. In front of these 2 choices, which one would we choose, sincerely? Some people say, can't I have both? Truly, that's what I would like, The fact is that when we want both, it means that truly we don't trust the second. When inside we say, oh, but actually both would be nice, it's because truly we don't trust the second. We think that, okay, I can develop anything inside, but with this body, it's difficult. with what about this and that, but still money will be lacking, and still this person will be there making me trouble, and still that will be like this, and that other will be like that. So what's the point? But if we really analyze well, when we want something so much, let's say I desire very much the tea, okay? And I have attachment. Once I get it, it becomes my tea. And I like it so much. But truly, why do I want it? Because I want the tea, or because I want the sensation of pleasure that I have when I drink the tea? What am I really attached to? The sensation of pleasure. Okay. So what happens is that truly what we want is the inner sensation of pleasure, and is the inner sensation of satisfaction. And here comes one important point also, that is, very often we make a confusion between pleasure and happiness. Happiness doesn't come from pleasure. Happiness comes from satisfaction. Happiness is this deep inner state in which everything is just fine. It's this deep inner state in which we do not wish anything to be different from what it is. It's not the moment that we stimulate our senses and we get a moment of pleasure. But nowadays there is a strong confusion with that. And you want to be happy? Induce yourself in pleasure. Which brings a very, very, very momentary state of sort of happiness. But what happens with pleasure? The stronger is the pleasure, the stronger is the sensation of suffering when the pleasure goes away. Because then we feel the whole becomes even bigger. Instead, with satisfaction, it just fills up inside. It becomes more stable. So happiness is much more about satisfaction than about pleasure. Nothing against pleasure, but that's not the solution. Okay. So, when we talk about the reason why we want things, truly, what we want is the sensation of pleasure, the sensation of satisfaction. It's not the actual objects. And this makes something come to my mind. It's not completely related, but somehow related to what we were talking. Which is, I'm sorry, I say it because otherwise it remains in the back of my head. I had two friends. One of them, an expert in wine, and wine lover. And I remember going to his house, and he had an idea to make a specific wine, whatever, to give nice messages to people through the wine. Had a whole idea there, and I was, somehow helping him. So he would go and he would make wine tasting. So there he would go there, 3 different types of wine, blindfold the bottle so you don't know what is the wine. And then he would drink it and go. And then drink the wine. Here there's this wood, that wood in this wine, and with this type of grape and that type of grape, and it's old, it's new, and here and there, this is good. Very complex stuff. Okay? And he really enjoys drinking wine. Fine. Then I have another friend that really likes drinking wine, but he doesn't care what is the wine. As long as it's wine, that's good enough. So, if we put together the both of them, which one of them finally have more satisfaction with wine? Which ones really enjoy themselves more? The one that don't care what type of wine it is, okay? So the other one, really to enjoy himself takes a lot. Even when it's, let's say, a good wine, he says it's good, but there is always a but somewhere. Okay, maybe it's a little bit, I never drank wine, so I'm not the right person to talk about it, but I saw many times, so, oh, maybe here is a little bit white, this is not so much, in Italian say corposo, doesn't have so much body, not so much strong, and this one is like this, and that one is that, and this, and like this they would go on. Instead, the other one just drink, and he's happy with it. So, if we look from this point of view, which one actually gets more of what both of them want? which is the pleasure of drinking. The more simple one, in this sense. So, what I want to say is that happiness is not coming from constructing a world around us that has everything that we want. We cannot live in a perfect world. That's simply not possible. Because we ourselves are imperfect. There is a very simple rule which I learned when I was around 17, 18 years old, and it changed my life. Deeply understanding when the penny dropped, and I cling, and I said, okay, now I got it. The rule is the following: problems exist and will always exist. And normally what happens when one problem ends? At least another one starts. And the most crazy part of the rule is that what happens when one problem finishes and no problem starts? We create one. Because truly speaking, for most of us, do we really have problems? Really, I mean real problems. But do we still complain about something? Do we still enter in conflict with situations and things? But most of the times we suffer because of the way how things are, or we suffer because the things are not in the way how we think they should be. Mostly we suffer, why? Because things are not in the way how we think they should be. No? One thing is a person is harming me and making me pain. Then I'm suffering for what is happening. Another thing is that the person is nice to me, but is not as nice as the person should be. One thing is I don't have food. Another thing is I have food, but the food is not this and is not that. So what I want to say is that until we have insatisfaction, it doesn't matter how much we have. It's simply never going to be enough. So what's one of the keys for happiness? Stop projecting our own state of well-being and satisfaction on the external world. On creating a world that will be perfect. And it's not easy also because you know what happens? Since we are young, we grow up with an idealized image of what is a happy life. So-called American dream. American dream. Okay, so what is to be happy? To have a nice family with a couple of kids, both looking very, one boy, one girl, both looking very nice, a dog on the side, a beautiful house with a garden in the front, a nice car. That's the picture, more or less, somehow, you know? Hollywood. Okay? And finally there is the beautiful marriage, and what happens after marriage? They live happily ever. Isn't that what we are taught since we are small or not? Mostly the problems is that they show in all the Walt Disney stories, he shows up to marriage. The next chapter is never shown, you know. It would be nice somehow to have, I don't know, Cinderella after marriage, you know. Or to have, I don't know, whatever, we have all these things, which doesn't mean that it doesn't need necessarily to go to the divorce, but we go back to daily life, and things are not always wonderful, and we still have problems, and we still have things to come. What I mean is that I'm not saying that I have nothing against marriage, nothing at all, okay? But what I see in our society, which comes from the education that we receive, is that the weight that is put on marriage, which is not necessarily, nowadays is not anymore marriage, is relationship. It's like if the relationship is or the cause of happiness or the cause of suffering. It's like when someone comes to you and say, "You make me happy." No, please don't say that to me. Don't put the weight of your happiness on my shoulders. You make yourself happy. And I can interact with you in a way to help you to do that, but I make no one happy other than myself. And I cannot make anyone happy other than myself. Each one of us can make ourselves happy. But what I want to say is that when we think about happiness, not only we start thinking now, but we already come with an idealized image of what happiness is. And it was taught to us since we are small. On the culture in which we grow, on the context in which we grow, the education we receive, and everything else, we are taught an image of what we need to do and what must be to be happy. And for whatever reason, we always place happiness in the future. And we always place happiness connected to something that we don't have and how we think that things should be. Happiness is an inner state, which depends on satisfaction, depends on loving others, of opening ourselves, of being in harmony with the present. But problems exist, and problems will always exist. Otherwise, what we do a lot in life is what we say in Portuguese, trocar seis por meia dúzia, which means to exchange 6 for half a dozen. Okay? Which means there is something that we don't like, or I don't like 6, but what I put instead of 6? Half a dozen. After some time, I will see that it's the same. Okay? So, what happens is that only creating a good condition around us, truly speaking, is not enough. I have nothing against having a nice house. I have nothing against building up a good relationship with someone that we love. I have nothing against family, nothing against having a good body and taking care of one's body. All of these things are wonderful and beautiful. I'm not against any of this. But it's simply not enough to be happy. How many people we know, don't need to count ourselves, but how many people we know that have everything to be happy and still complaining every day? People that we see and we say, come on, everything is there. And still it's not good, and it's still this, and it's still that. Many, no? One time I was talking, I remember now, to a group of kids in Brazil. And they all came from very, very poor background. They were all around their 17, 18 years old. And they all came from very poor families. And then I was telling to them, what would you think is life in a place that is almost no unemployment? Where everybody have all their basic needs satisfied? Where you have no problem of having a place where you live, where food is not an issue, where medical care is not an issue, and so on. Okay, Holland, Denmark, Finland, whatever, okay? They said, that's paradise. I said, would you be really happy in a place like this? They said, no doubt, I wouldn't need anything else. And I said to them, do you think the people that live in this place, they are completely always happy? They said, sure. Because you are living what is their dream. But the problem is that even for them, once they come to this dream and come true, they will see that actually it's not such a big dream. Something is still missing. Because we know of it, or not. It's not enough to have all of that to bring true satisfaction, true well-being. Where is mostly our well-being and satisfaction coming from? Harmony, love, satisfaction itself. Satisfaction is not the result of having many things. Satisfaction is not the result of gaining what we want. Satisfaction is an inner state that we can develop. One of the means of developing satisfaction is that of, for me at least, is that of relating to things in the way of what do I really need, was the example I was given before of first the watch and then the pen. And then I was quite happy some time ago, actually it was this February some point, where a person came to me saying, I like to give you a present. It was like indirect, someone told me, look, this person likes to give you a present but doesn't know what to give to you and so on. And was a person to whom the price tag didn't matter. And I said, likes to buy you something. What would you like? I said, I don't know. And when I started looking around, and I started even thinking about something here or there, and I was seeing that there was nothing really that I thought, okay, I would like this, Okay, I would like, okay, build me the second floor of the temple. This I would like, But a present for myself, I was looking and I was saying, I don't know. There's nothing that I feel, okay, I get that, And finally the person gave me a new computer, which, okay, nice, I'm very happy with it. So it was useful because then my old computer, which is still good, I give to the center. And other people can use it also. So it was more or less having two of the same. So it was nice. But what I want to say is that for me it was really it was one of the very nice moments of this year. When I looked and I said, oh, there is nothing that I really want, Or like there is one shop which I really like. I used to like to go very much. The times I went personally or to look online, is a shop called B&H in New York, which is one of the biggest shops in the world of electronics and photographic, everything related to photography and technology and all of these things. And it was the last time I was looking and said, so what, What's the point of having the most beautiful camera if you are not using it for something? Things exist within a function. And once we start understanding that, what becomes more important is not what I have, but what I do. And are the tools that I have enough to do what I want to do or not? What do I need a car for? To take me from one place to the other, possibly in a safe and comfortable way. That's what I need. So, satisfaction is when we start understanding the relationship between ourselves and the objects. Not only the objects, the situations in which we live. The people that are with us. And one of the things that takes away satisfaction most of the times is comparison. And most of the times is the comparison with an idealized image that we have of that thing. For example, with people. When we relate to each other, truly, who do we relate with? The person or the image we have of the person? Most of the times is the image. Okay. Yes, we touch each other, we look at each other, we talk to each other. But when I think about you and I look at you, I relate to you through the image I have of you. And very often, where is insatisfaction coming from? From the fact that you cannot keep up with the image I have of you. You are not enough compared to the image of what I think you should have been, or what I think you should be. I am what I am. If you like, good. If you don't like, what can I do? Let's try to make it better, but I am what I am. Right? As all are, as we all are. But the point is that in relationships with other people, we have the tendency to have an idealized image of the other. And this is something which I saw even in the spiritual path, a very strong difference between East and West. In the Eastern countries, in relation, for example, with one's own parents, or in relation with one's own spiritual guide, and so on, the tendency is to have a lot of respect and to put the parents and the friends or the spiritual guide, the guru, in a very high position and say, okay, there you are, I have full respect, I try to bring myself up to your level. That's what is happening. What I see in the West very often is that first we have the tendency to have an idealized image of the other, and we put in a very high, throne on a very high, what do you say in Asian, a pedestal? No, we put in a very high pedestal. Then we take the gun and we start looking for defects. No? To try to put down from the pedestal in which we put ourselves. Like first I say you are the most wonderful, but now you must prove to me that you are, and you are worth of the pedestal that I have given to you. I'm making all by myself. Is it clear, this idea? So what happens is that our insatisfaction very often is not coming from what the other is or is not. It's coming from the fact that we attribute a value. We project an idealized image, and then the person or the situation cannot sustain the idealized image, then the person or the situation is not good enough. But I am the one that projected something even better, or even greater, that was not necessarily better or greater, but something that cannot be sustained. So one of the parts for satisfaction is to remember that we relate to things through mental images. And we need to try to relate with things without having an idealized image. And remember that the person is the person, the situation is the situation, the object is the object. And sure, I relate through an image, but I need to adapt this image from time to time, instead of wanting the other to adapt to the image that I have of him, or the situation, or the place, and so on. And most of the times, the problem is not the situation or the person. The problem is that I attribute a value that cannot be sustained. That's why, for me, it becomes not enough. So, there is even a saying, no? Even in our Western countries say, when do we truly value things? When we lose them. Most of the times we have a tendency to value something when we're about to lose them. Or not? Yes. Do we value our eyes when we wake up in the morning and open them? No. Then one day I got a diagnosis of one sickness called, I think in English is ceratocon. Keratocon, something like this in English. Anyhow, doesn't matter. I got this diagnosis of this eye, sickness in the eye, where the cornea, it's not so hard and it becomes like a cone, slowly. That's why I wear glasses, basically. And my auntie has the same sickness, and she did like transplant of cornea 3-4 times and almost got blind, and it's a quite difficult situation. So when I had this diagnosis the first time, I said, oh, okay. Then I tried to imagine what would be the worst case scenario. And I thought, actually, the eyesight which I take for granted is not so much for granted. It could happen one day that I cannot see as I see now. It could happen one day that suddenly it goes worse and worse and worse. I'm not able anymore to read. I'm not able anymore to see the beautiful things around. Like nowadays, today going around this area, so beautiful, the trees in autumn. Can come one day that I cannot see any of this anymore. So, what was the conclusion? Happiness. So good that I can see now. So beautiful. No? Because I said, okay, what will come will come. In the meantime, I need to make a good use of my eyes. I even had this strange thought one moment, oh, I need to read the books that one day I like to listen and record them, so one day I can listen to it, you know. Luckily, fortunately, it's very stable. Since the first time I did exam up to now, there has been no change at all. Originally, the doctor said, oh, make an exam every 6 months. Then after a few years, said, okay, every year, every 2 years, because it's very, very stable. And basically, the doctors told me this just for not everybody not to get worried. He just said, oh, if you see changes on your eyesight, this means there is something happening there. But if it's stable like that, there's nothing to worry, and it's very stable. But in the moment that that happened, it touched me to say, oh, how precious are my eyes. Why? Because I saw a real possibility of losing my sight. Or one day I was walking in front of my house in Italy and I twisted my ankle. And it took 2 months to cure. I said, look what, 2 seconds, putting the foot in the wrong way, and there I cannot walk comfortable for 2 months. So when I started walking back well again, oh, how nice, no? So normally, when do we start giving value to things? When there is a true possibility of losing it, or when we lose it. So, one thing that is important to help us to be more satisfied with what we have is to remember that everything is impermanent. And we cannot take anything for granted. And that actually, what we have, it's more than what we need to be happy. What we have is much, much, much more than what we need to be happy. What we have is much more than enough. Where is the problem? That we have an idealized image of something that we don't have, and we become attached with something that we don't have, and that's why we project the happiness always in the future. Instead of just coming down and saying, okay, what I have, it's enough. Oh, but I have problems. Tell me who don't have problems. When I look at the life of my teachers, of my masters, I've never seen any one of them that didn't have problems. And it remembered me one thing now. One time I was talking to one of them. His name was Gangchen, Geshe Tenzin Wandak. He passed away some years ago. And one day I asked him, I was very near to him, we would live together in the same house. And I asked him, which was the best moment of your life after leaving Tibet in 1959? The most joyful and most happy period in your life. I had some idea, but I wanted to confirm. And he told, were the first 10 years. I said, why? Because I knew the story, so I said, in the first 10 years you were living in the north of India, one place called Buxa, B-U-X-A, in which it was an ex-jail from the British. And it was a place where 80% of the monks that were there had tuberculosis. The food was terrible because it was the humanitarian help that was coming, and because of corruption, when the food arrived, it was basically rice full of rat shit inside and dead insects. So they needed to clean it, but it was not even possible to clean it so well. So many of them got sick. There was no even a bed where to sleep. To sleep it meant lay down where you are and loosen your own belt. That was all. It was a place that was cold in winter, hot in summer. They were not used to hot. Many of them, when they arrived in India, they thought they had fever, so they put more clothes on because they never had experienced heat in their life, other than when they had fever. A story, I remember a mother that she told me that when she arrived in India, she saw her son starting to sweat. So she put more clothes on him. No, it was not easy for them. They had just lost their country, just lost many of the people whom they loved. They just saw their own institutions, monastic institutions, which meant a lot for them, their whole lifestyle being destroyed. And they were in a situation that was totally uncertain. They had no idea what would happen in the future. And how could this have been the best 10 years? Because in the period later, when they came to south of India, they established very well the monastery. They had been living for the past 10 years. When I talked to him, where nothing was missing materially, they had money, they had good food. No one was rich materially, but there was enough for everybody. And they had a very good situation there. They had a bright future ahead. Everything was fine. Why the first 10 years were the best? Because he said, because the first 10 years, I had nothing else in my mind other than my spiritual practice and the political situation of Tibet. These were the two only things that I would talk about and I would think about. Because there was no any future perspective, we had the present. And what I had in the present, my practice, my meditation, the study of philosophy, my spiritual retreats. I was with people that I loved. And because no one had anything, there was no jealousy around, no envy around. And we had the most special moments of our life during that 10 years. So what was very clear for me? When we are very rich inside, what we have outside doesn't really matter. Then what happened is that when we arrived in the south of India and we start building, and then we start to have more resources, then between ourselves start to have what is mine and what is yours. And our attention, our energy started to go to external things and to build up external richness instead of taking care of the internal richness. And the period in which the most priority was the internal richness, that was the best of all. Okay? I don't mean by this that we need to give up whatever richness or something we have, okay? I'm not saying that at all. But what I mean is that our happiness comes from building up our internal richness, which is satisfaction, joy, love for ourselves, love for others, generosity, patience, humility, presence in the present moment, attention, concentration, peaceful state of mind, wisdom. That's what really makes the difference. That's what truly brings us happiness, you know. Even I was talking to some companies sometimes, and this time in Holland, and we went to different places, I made this question to different places, and they all gave me the same answer, as I did in Brazil. If we go to a company, multinational, big company, I did this question in Citibank, wherever, it doesn't matter. And you go to the company and you ask, what gives more problems and difficulties to the company? The lack of knowledge and technical understanding from its employees, or the lack of emotional stability from its employees? Lack of emotional stability, right? What gives more problems in our family environment? The lack of resources or the lack of emotional stability? The lack of emotional stability. What gives more trouble in our society? The lack of rules, the lack of good laws, the lack of material resources, or the lack of emotional stability? The lack of emotional stability. So why we don't put energy into developing it? From our schools to our old age home, you know? Because there is one thing from Buddhism which I learned, and I think it's very, very precious. It's the fact that we can teach ourselves, we can train ourselves emotionally. It's possible to train and to teach ourselves how to be emotionally. One time I was talking to my mother, she's a psychologist, and we were making comparisons between the classical Western psychology and Buddhism. And one of the points which she told me at the time, she said, one of the main differences that I see is that in Buddhism, we believe in emotional education. It's possible to educate ourselves emotionally, to develop more love, more patience, more generosity, less anger, less aggression, less envy, and so on. So how do we do that? Which is one of the keys truly for happiness. Because the main focus that I want to bring today, as I think it has already been put clearly, happiness does not depend on creating a perfect environment. Happiness does not depend on having a perfect world materially, because if this was the case, none of us should ever be sad, okay? We already have it. So, where is happiness coming from? And on the other side, where is unhappiness coming from? Where is suffering coming from? Because the two needs to go together. I need to cultivate what makes me happy, and I need to take away what makes me suffering. And where is our suffering coming from? Our own insatisfaction, our own emotional instability, and so on. So how do we develop that? There are some things that helps a lot, but I would like just to give some, how to say, an example of the technique through which we can do that. Because emotional education is possible. First of all, what is more easy to observe? Our body, our speech, and our mind. Body, right? So in order for us to direct ourselves into something, first we need to generate awareness about it. Okay? And to think about training ourselves, about educating ourselves, we can only train and educate ourselves using a very basic rule, which is the more I do something, the easier it becomes. Repetition. That's how training works, or not? Yes. When we go to school, how do we learn stuff? Repeating. When we need to learn a new job, how do we learn it? Repeating, by doing it. Like some people sometimes ask, oh, I don't have enough concentration. How I develop concentration? How we develop concentration? Concentrating. No, there's not any real big secret. There are things that help in between. But the real thing is that sit down, concentrate. The more I concentrate, the more easy it will be to be concentrated. So, we have this effect in our mind that is, the more we do something, the easier it becomes. Our mind is flexible. We learn by experience, by repetition. Okay? So, how do I repeat something that do not come naturally to me? By inducing myself to it. If I do not come, for me, let's say, I'm just making whatever example, okay? Let's say that for me it's not natural to smile to others. But I think it's good to smile. So what I do, I start to force myself artificially to smile. I would say to myself in the morning, today I will smile more. And when I am arriving in the place where I know people, I say, I will smile. And I will do it nicely. And when I see that I'm not smiling, breathe in, breathe out, remember, I need to smile. Okay, I smile again. Slowly what happens? In the beginning it's quite awkward because it's like doing something that is not real. The more we do, gradually it becomes natural. Okay? But what happens is that this is just a very basic example, okay, smiling. But there are many other things. One of them which really makes a big difference is, for example, the matter of satisfaction, which is the more we complain about something, the more unsatisfied we become. The more we complain, the more unsatisfied we are. The more unsatisfied we are, the more we suffer. The more we are grateful, the more satisfied we become. The more we are satisfied, the more happy we are. Okay? So, how do we change, how do we train ourselves? First, we analyze and we observe the way how we are. Second, we direct the way how we want to be. Third, we induce ourselves artificially to be in the way, in the direction of what we want to become. So we start with the body. Which is my physical behavior? How do I act physically towards others? Do I sit correctly? Do I smile enough? How do I say hello to someone? Am I present in what I am doing? How do I eat? How do I sleep? How do I act physically in my daily life? So first, awareness, mindfulness, awareness of my body and of the way how I act physically. Once I have awareness, I can see if the way how I am acting is coherent or not with what I want to become. If I think yes, wonderful. If I think not, which behaviors, physical behaviors I have that I need to change? When I say hello to people, I do not look myself in their eyes. Aren't there people sometimes when we say hello, hello? For me, something that is important is when I greet someone, even though it's for a few seconds, to be present with the person. Sometimes it's a bit strange. We say hello to the person, and the person is not there. So we must be there for the person. Second thing which I see sometimes is the way how we shake the hand. We can see so much by the way how we shake the hand, no? And for example, I believe that we need to be careful to respect the other person by the way how we interact with the person. So there are some people that shake the hand so strong without thinking on the other side how much strength I can use or not. There are other people that they shake the hand like this, no? Without giving any contact really, no? Okay? So what I want to say is that we need, when we go to interact with others, which is the best way that I think I should do? And gradually we start to force ourselves, which means to induce ourselves to act in that way. It's in the beginning, it's artificial, but gradually it becomes natural. I'm not telling here to fake anything. Faking means I show something that I don't mean. Artificial means I do something which I mean but doesn't come spontaneously. It's clear the difference. Okay? So we don't need to fake anything, but we need to induce ourselves artificially to act in the way how we think is the right way to be. Once we are able to observe our body and to direct our body, it becomes more easy to go to the next step, which is observing our speech and directing our speech. So how do I use my speech that is good? How do I use my speech that is not good? Do I say things that would be better not to say? For example, I have a rule which I think is quite good. Don't say what is not necessary. I think here in Holland is a bit better than in Italy somehow. I don't know really enough, but I feel that people talk less. Or not. Maybe a little bit less. I don't know, depends. But it's the fact that very often we have the tendency of just talking. Like for me, something that after I came from India, it was very awkward because I was used that when we eat, we don't talk. Tibetan tradition, culture is, when we eat, we don't talk. It's very unpolite to talk as you eat. So what's the Tibetan tradition? When you eat, we eat, just concentrate on the food with silence. When we finish to eat, we have tea, and during tea time, we talk. That's what is Tibetan culture. But anyhow, the fact is that I saw that very often we have this urgency to talk. And very often we have, when there is a group of people, very often people need to say something simply because they feel they need to say it, not because they want the other to listen to it. And I learned sometimes, which for me was new, that sometimes people want to say things, but they don't want to mean anything. They just need to express themselves. It's okay, but we need to be careful that when we simply express ourselves, the way that we express and what we say is not anymore ours once we have said. We have given to others, and people will make use of it. And after that, sometimes bring a price. So speech is very powerful. So don't say what is not necessary. That's a rule that I have. Better than just being in silence. No? Because I also saw people that made retreat of silence, not talking. But then some of them would walk with a board. And then have a little group of people gossiping. They would go there, listen to the gossip, And then they want to say something, they would write it down and show it to others. Okay? This is not silence, come on. So, the point which I want to say is like, for example, taking care of our speech. How do I speak towards others? Am I gentle? Am I rough? I'm coherent? Am I not coherent? I am saying things which are necessary, not necessary, and so on. And most of the times, if I have the doubt to say, not to say, better not to say. This is what I have seen. Okay? Also because when we truly mean something, even without saying it, we can pass that idea. And then there are some things which is good to say that normally we don't say. Okay? So we need to observe our own speech. First, have to be aware of how am I using my speech, and second, direct it. Say things that normally would not come spontaneously, which I think are good to say. Control one's own speech from not saying what I know that is not good to say, even though it's a habit. The tone of my voice, and so on. We need to direct our speech. Once we are able to direct the speech, then it becomes more easy to go to the third step. Have awareness of our thoughts and direct our thoughts. And then from that, we can move on in a much more smooth way. Okay. It's much better to be an artificial, altruistic person than a naturally selfish person. It's much better to be an artificial patient person than a naturally angry person. Why? Because when we do things in an artificial way, gradually it becomes natural. Okay? So, as a conclusion for this, happiness doesn't come from outside. And even if we live in a world that is difficult and have problems and things are in a way and in another and so on, and my image for happiness, for life on this, is imagining that we are on a seesaw, call like this in English, this place where children play, or this game, where you sit on one edge, the other one on the other edge, and it goes up and down, no? A whip. Okay, so in Holland they call it a whip. Okay, so when we are in the whip, okay, on the seesaw, when we are in the whip, what happens? Imagine that life is like a whip, okay? And what we pass great part of the life is that when we are up, we are worried it's going to go down. When we are down, we wonder when it's going to go up. So when things are good, very often we don't enjoy the good things because we are worried that sooner or later it will go down. So we are worried of the future when it will go down. When we are down, normally we worry that, oh, I cannot pass my whole life like this, it cannot be always like that, and we try to make it a way for it to go up. But life is always going up and down. The thing for me, and this is too long to go in details now, but the true answer is that the solution is not to try to keep the whip always up, because that's what we try to do somehow. But, you know, when we are in the game, when it goes up, being up is of the same nature of being down. When it goes up naturally, sooner or later it will go down. When it goes down, sooner or later it will go up. Okay? The real solution is to go down from the whip. Stop playing in it. And this means stop living in this game of projecting happiness in what cannot sustain it. Having momentary pleasure and then after trying to hold it knowing that it will end soon. And then after projecting into something else. And we live in this game constantly and it's quite tiring actually. So it's to understand that happiness is not something that will happen, say, who knows when in the future. It's an inner state of mind which we can get in the present. and which depends not in how the world is, but it depends how we relate to the world. And one very basic thing for happiness, which is simple but is not obvious, and is a little deep, it's not so simple to recognize it actually, but is to allow ourselves to be happy. Many of us very often do not allow ourselves to be happy. Even there is this saying in the West, it's too good to be true. Why? Why can't it simply be good? Or there are some people that when they are when they are really happy, when we meet there are some people that by nature they have their own inner qualities and they are very happy in life, And by other people they are seen as stupid people. Look at this person, always happy. Not seeing the problem. And sometimes the happiness of people is even disturbing. One time it happened to me that I went to give a talk in Italy. It was in the University of the Third Age, like where all the students go from 60 to 80 and over. Beautiful place, very nice people. But when I finished to give the talk with them, a group of 2-3 ladies, some questions, and then they said to me, how you dare to come here with such great arrogance? Sorry, it was not my intention to harm anyone, but could you explain me why you see like this? What have I done? With all the suffering we have, you come with all that happiness? Not talking about happiness, about the way you come here, everything's so nice, so happy, with all the difficulties you have, Sometimes to have someone happy, it can even be disturbing. And it can even be more disturbing when we see someone happy, having problems that we see as causes for unhappiness. How can you be happy in this situation? Are you stupid or what? And the other person from the other side say, how can you be unhappy in this situation? Are you stupid or what? You have everything to be happy. When we have no food, the simple fact of having food, isn't that enough to be happy? Yes. When we live in a situation of constant violence, the idea to live in a place that is safe, isn't that enough as an idea to be happy? Yes. So what happens is that truly when we look, we have enough, but we need to allow ourselves to be happy. We need to embrace ourselves and say, it's okay. What I have, it's enough. Today is the best day of my life. Everything is beautiful. It is good. My life is perfect. I need to see it in this way. I need to relate to it as being good enough. I can always do other things. I can always make new experiences and do wonderful things and take care of the problems. That's fine. But we need to allow ourselves to be happy. And one of the ways of doing that is by generating gratitude. By saying thank you for what you have. And thank you doesn't need necessarily to be directed towards someone. It means I am happy that I can see. I'm happy that I can walk. I'm happy that I can have friends. I'm happy that I have a spiritual path. I'm happy that I have food. I'm happy that I have a relatively good health. I'm happy that I have a good understanding about things. I'm happy that my mind is functioning. I'm happy that today is a beautiful day. I'm happy that it's raining. I'm happy that no. Each thing have it their own way. And to be grateful in life. This is one of the most important things. Okay? And the other thing is that it's very important in our life to put energy into generating that states of mind that we want to have naturally. By that, gradually we train ourselves and it makes a change. If we only expect one day to become a patient person, it will not happen. If we start artificially not reacting with aggression in front of the object of anger, slowly we train ourselves. If we expect one day to love everyone in the same way, it will not happen. if we start gradually to open our heart to those that we don't know, and to start even to train to love other people that we don't like, so-called enemies, and we start gradually to try to love others really in more sincere way and to open our heart and so on, gradually it will come. So it's a gradual process, but I truly believe that it's possible. Otherwise, we live in this conceptualized, idealized idea of how things should be. But life is happening right now here. And I don't think to be happy, anyone need to be a Buddhist. Buddhism is not going to make anyone happy or more happy. Practicing Buddhism, yes, will make you a more happy person. Being a Buddhist, not necessarily. Putting into practice the teachings, this yes will make you a more happy person. Developing more love and more compassion and more patience and stability and satisfaction and all of this, yes, will make any one of us more happy. This makes the real difference. Okay, so this is mainly what I wanted to bring today. Actually, tomorrow and the day after tomorrow we have much more time to talk, and I will bring other things which somehow are connected to it. Because in Buddhism, what is the goal? To become a Buddha. What is a Buddha? The human being with its qualities developed to its maximum potential. It's to be really, truly happy. That's what it means. You know? One of the things that it means in Buddhism of having a Buddha, it means like, okay, if someone asks, what is a Buddha? The Buddha is the representation of the perfect health, the perfect inner state of health that we can develop, of what we truly can become. The problem is that very often we don't take care of our health, we only take care of our sickness. Mental and physical and emotional. But it's much more important to do health care than to do sick care. Also emotion. When do I need to develop more patience? Not when I get angry. When I am happy and well and everything is fine, that's when I need to train myself to be patient. When do I need to open my heart? When is the moment that everything is fine, which is more easy, and then I need to induce myself to that feeling, and it gradually develops more and more. So in other words, when do we need to take care of our health? When we are sick or when we are healthy? When we are healthy. But normally, when do we think about health? When we get sick. So this is not working. Okay. So when do we need to take care of happiness? When everything is fine. And then we need to cultivate the parts that brings us really well-being and happiness, and take gradually away the ones that take away that happiness. Such as one of them that we focused today, that is insatisfaction. Because insatisfaction has the power to make something that is very good for us as completely meaningless. Insatisfaction has the power of taking something that is of benefit for us, that is beautiful, that is very difficult to have, and that has great value, and taking completely away its value. It's like I have 10, and 10 is really a lot, but because it's not 20, it's not enough. And then it's not good enough. Then I don't want, because it's not good enough. So you prefer to have 0? No, I want 20. But 20 is not possible. Oh, but or 20 or nothing. So somehow, insatisfaction really takes away what we have. So today we ended up focusing on that. And I think this is one of the keys for our happiness, is truly satisfaction. And I just like to say one more thing about satisfaction that just came to my mind now, which is a very good example for me. One time I went to India after coming for a holiday in Italy, in Europe. Went to Italy, I went to Brazil, and then I was going back after a month back to the monastery. And I thought, okay, I need to take a present to my teacher, Gelapala. And I say, okay, what present do you buy for an old monk that doesn't want anything? So I bought 2 pair of socks. Okay, they were like this red monk color, this like red Bordeaux color of socks, nice cotton socks. He used to walk a lot, and the socks that he used to have there were made of plastic, polyester, whatever. That was terrible for his sweating foot and so on. So I said, okay, I buy nice cotton socks for him. Best quality Italian socks. So I got this very nice pair of socks for him. And when I arrived there, I gave him the pair of socks. He took it. He was a very nice person, and he used to play a lot, and he has very good sense of humor. So he took the socks and he told me, and now what I do with this? And then I answer him, Gemma, can you see a relationship? Socks, foot, and shoes. You know? And he told me, but I already have 2 pairs of socks. And then I looked and I said, yes, it's true, Gemma, but the socks, he had only 2 pairs of socks, no more than that. And I said, but the socks that you have, you know, they are old and the elastic is not working anymore. So he used to put an elastic for paper, this thick elastic for paper. He used to put together to hold the socks up. Because I don't know how many of you have had experiences of wearing long socks with a skirt. It makes the socks to go down, okay? So he needed to put a strong elastic. So what happened is he had this elastic, which in the end of the day I would be home very often when he arrived, and he would take the sock out, and it would be the mark on his leg of the elastic. And so I said to him, look, this is happening like this, it's not good, and these socks are of polyester, the one I brought you are of pure cotton, they are much better, this and that and so on. But he said, I have 2 socks, I use one, I wash the other, why do I need more? And after I insisted a little bit, and then he said, okay, thank you. So he took the socks, and it didn't take 2 days that I saw other monks wearing the socks I gave to him. Later, I understood truly what he meant and what he was doing in practice. What he told me in another occasion was, not with these words, but to make translating it somehow, he said, we are weak. We can very easily fall in our weaknesses. So if I start to give space to what I want and not what I need, it will take always more and more space from me. If I get the 3rd pair of socks, I will need the 30th pair of socks. How many socks do we really need? 2 winter, 2 summer maybe. How many foots do we have? Okay, how many times we change socks a day? Normally we use the same socks the whole day, right? So why do we need more than 2 pairs, really? Because we don't like to wash them every day. Okay, then have 5 pairs of socks and wash once a week. I don't know. The point is that the moment that we start going beyond what we truly need, then we start creating more and more and more and more and more and more and more, then it's never enough. And one thing that he had very clear in his life, as an example for me, was that one of the greatest of his richness was his satisfaction. And he was always happy. He was always fine. And he was one of the most simple persons I have ever met. Before dying, he gave away all his books. He just kept the very basic things he had. All the money that he had put together was 1,500 euros around, which he gave it to the monastery before dying. And I paid for some of his medical cares, which was more or less the same value. And he was happy. One thing, he was not comparing himself with others. He was seeing the preciousness of every day. He was grateful for what he had. And he knew very well that he had weaknesses, such as his own desires. And he knew very well that if he gave space to them, they will take over him. He's like one of my other teachers. whenever His Holiness the Dalai Lama would come to the monastery to give teachings, he is still one of the masters of the most greatest importance in the monastery of more than 4,000 monks. But he never ever accepted to have any degree of importance like being the abbot or anything like that. He was requested many times. He even escaped one time from the monastery because he said, don't come back until I am sure that I never need to be an abbot. Anyhow, so when the monastery, the teachings were going on, imagine a place like we're having now talk, but for 6,000 people. And nearby the place where the Dalai Lama would sit, would only sit the very important people. There is a hierarchy. So are the abbots, the vice abbots, the most important masters that have titles, the important lamas, and so on. And like this would go down and down. And the Dalai Lama will call him personally and send someone for him personally to sit nearby him, in the place of the greatest respect. He would never sit there. He would sit outside the temple, near to a sound box, where the lay people were sitting. And I asked him, Gela, why you do that? And he answered, the higher you are, the more it's painful when you fall down. And then he told me, I know my mind. If I am sitting there, I am not going to concentrate well in the teachings, which is the true reason why I should come here. And I'm going to be watching. Oh, I am in this special position. Who is also here? How are people still looking at me? Who is also looking at me? Who is also in a special position? What are they thinking of me because I am in this position where I'm not actually supposed to be? And why this and why that? And now will come jealousy because the Dalai Lama treats me specially and I'm not saying this to the other, and this and that. And he say, I know my mind. So what I do? I just sit outside. I said, but the tea comes cold. And he said, who cares? So one thing is that these are two great masters. And what they saw, they respected their own weaknesses. And they cultivate their strength. But they respect their weak points, you know. And they know that if they go in that direction, slowly they can be taken by that weaknesses. So they protected themselves from their own weaknesses. This is something that we also need to do. This is called morality, mind protection. And it's not done with happiness, it's done with lightness, it's done with joy. Okay? So we should allow ourselves to be happy, protect ourselves from our weakness, cultivate our qualities. And by that, gradually we become more and more happy, more and more satisfied. Okay, I think this is all for tonight. I don't know if we're still time or everybody would like to make any questions. It's very, very welcome.
I have a question. Yeah, about this last part you were saying. Isn't there a danger when you respect your weakness, don't get into contact maybe with the weakness, that it stays in the mind, but you cannot transform it? Or
It's the following. If you keep your weakness, in the sense of if you create a comfort zone that you don't need to touch your weakness, it's not good. Okay. We need from time to time to go out of our comfort zone in order to develop our qualities and to overcome our weaknesses. But we also need to respect the limit from which the weakness will take power over us. It's clear?
yes.
Okay. Any other question? Okay. 1, 2, 3. No. Okay.
I have a question about training.
Mm-hmm.
That you gave an example of training your patience.
Yes.
And I've been trying to train my patience
Okay.
for quite a while. And what I see happening again and again is that I'm observing myself being as impatient as ever.
Okay.
So,
To train patience, we need to have technique.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's not just the simple fact of saying I need to be more patient, and it's not observing ourselves as we get angry. It's part of the process, but it's just one part, very small part of it. So I will be very brief to give you an idea of how to make this training.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. First of all, you need to go to the process of understanding all the reasons why you should never ever be angry. Okay? Is getting to the conclusion that there is no reason in the world whatsoever. It doesn't matter what happens, it's not a valid reason to be angry. Okay? If you need some help for this process, you can look in the 6th chapter of the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, this beautiful text which is called A Guide to the Lifestyle of a Bodhisattva. There are teachings which I gave on this online also, which are more than 150 verses only about this. Okay? To understand really why there is no reason for me to be angry. The person is just doing what he does out of his own ignorance. By getting angry, I will not solve anything. I will just make myself to suffer more, etc., etc., etc. I lose control of my speech. I lose control of my thoughts. I lose control of my actions. I destroy all the positive things that I build up, and so on. Okay? You can go on and on to see all the faults of anger. Until we reach in a conclusion, there is no reason whatsoever for me to be angry. So once we know this, then we sit down in meditation when we are fine, when there is no object of anger around, we're Sunday at home, everything is fine, no problem. Okay? Sit down, do first some breathing meditation. Bring yourself to a state of more calm and peace, everything is fine. Then you can do also Guru Yoga practice, request the blessings of the Guru and the lineage and so on. If you like, you can do the preliminary practices up to the Guru Yoga part. Then request the blessings to be able to train in patience. Then at that point, as you are sitting, concentrate the mind with the breath, and then do an analytical meditation on patience, which is, imagine that you are explaining to someone else why there is no reason to be angry. And this person really doesn't understand it so clearly. So imagine that there you are and you start this dialogue, explaining to the person why there is no reason whatsoever to be angry, and you will enlist the faults of anger and so on, okay? Once you have done that and you conclude you are able to convince that person about that, okay, then you take all this analytical mind and you keep it aside. It's like hiding on the corner of the room. Bring back your attention to your breath, and then imagine a situation that normally will make you angry. Like invite this situation to happen. Imagine it strongly until the feeling of anger really comes. So you start feeling something coming from the stomach and going up, and the anger starts to come. And when the anger truly, sincerely, not conceptually, starts to appear, then that part of the mind that was hidden on the corner of the room needs to come out. And say, what are you doing? There is no reason to be angry. And then we take all that analysis and that reasoning and we put it onto ourselves. Okay. Until we are able to contain that energy and redirect that energy into indifference, into putting the energy into something else which is more the solution instead of being blocked there. But in meditation, in visualization, we direct ourselves to react with patience. What is patience? Non-aggression in front of the object of anger. Not to react in an aggressive way, physically, verbally, mentally. First physically we train, then verbally, then mentally, in front of an object of anger. Most probably the first times you do this meditation, you will end up of the meditation angry. Okay? That's what will happen in most of the beginners, okay? Slowly, slowly, you will be able truly, sincerely, in meditation, to change your attitude. And then what are you doing in this moment? You are inducing yourself into a state of patience. That's how you train patience, by developing patience. Okay? And if you do this constantly, the next time you will be in front of the actual object, your reaction will be different. Because you don't have a memory only of concept, you have a memory of experience, of reacting differently. And it's the experience that we need to train in. To train in patience is not to train in the concept of patience, it's to train in the actual experience of patience. And we can only train patience by being in front of an object of anger and not reacting with anger. So this is what we do through meditation. And this makes a big difference. Okay?
Can I add something? There is a transcription of Lama Michel teaching on anger and patience.
Yes.
Here.
All right. Well, I'll.
It's on the book table.
Okay.
I'll try it.
So I think this is one of the basic concepts of meditation. You know, some years, like last time in Holland, I gave a speech which was meditation beyond mindfulness, in which we explained that the true meaning, not the true, but meditation, mindfulness is a very important part. But meditation, for me, the meaning means to self-induce oneself to a certain state of consciousness in order to familiarize oneself with that. So I need to induce myself to patience in order to meditate on patience. I need to induce myself to love in order to meditate on love. It's not to meditate on the meaning of love or to meditate on the meaning of patience. Because most probably you can train yourself a lot on the meaning of patience, but you are not really training yourself in patience. It's a tricky thing in between. Okay?
Yeah.
So I think we can conclude for tonight. And I'm very grateful that all of you have come here. And that to be together here with an open mind, or a clear mind and an open heart. And I'd just like to make one simple request. If there is anything that we said today that you think that may be of benefit, please put it into practice. Please bring it to your life. Put an effort to make of these words your own words. To make this part of your own life. That's all that I request. Okay? For those that are interested of coming tomorrow and the day after, we'll be talking about what is called the 4 seals, which is the 4 fundamentals of Buddhist philosophy. Okay? And which is basically impermanence, mental defilements as the cause of suffering, our potential to be happy or to reach nirvana, and the lack of inherent existence of all phenomena or correct view of reality. Okay? Which is the basis of Buddhist philosophy, okay, that we will go through these next 2 days. So we'll just do one final dedication and we conclude for today. Chetsu lame kutse rabden chi nam kartin le chochur ge padam lo santem pedro me sasungi drove munsel tatu ne gyurchi nimo dele tsendele nime kuyan dele shin ninsen taktu dele pe koncho sungi jingilo Koncho sumgi nodrupso, koncho sumgi trashisho. At dawn or dusk, at night or midday, may the 3 jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness.
Bij zonsopgang en zonsondergang, bij nacht of middag, mogen de 3 juwelen onze zegeningen schenken. Mogen zij onszelf naar alle realisaties te verwerven en het pad van ons leven besproeien met variërende tekens van voorspoed.
Bij zo'n aanvang en nacht en middag,
Mögen die 3 juwelen ons in zegen gewähren, mögen sie uns helfen, alle Verwicklungen zu erlangen und unser Lebensweg mit verschiedensten Dingen zu schenken.
Thank you very much.